Hello and welcome to the Entrepreneurs Connect podcast. We are joined today by Jonathan Chak. Jonathan has built 5 businesses in different industries from scratch and has offered support to over 100 entrepreneurs as a mentor and a coach. He's worked with universities in Sydney and he's worked as a growth hacker and startup consultant. And he currently works with I4 Connect, partnering with the New South Wales government to support upcoming startups. So Jonathan, thank you for joining us here today. It's lovely to see you.
Thank you, Oscar. And thanks for having me here today.
Alrighty. So I know, Jonathan, that we have quite a young audience, a lot of people coming out of high school or first couple of years of uni. So I know that you studied design when you were at university. So would you please share a bit about your background and then explain how you first got involved with entrepreneurship?
Sure. Well, where do we start? Born in Hong Kong in the 80s, came to Australia with my parents in the 90s. And this is my 28th year in Australia, actually. I remembered at a very young age, there are already early signs of the entrepreneur in me. For example, in primary school, I started trading the equivalent of Pokemon cards today. And instead of trading them as is, I started creating these DIY hologram versions of them so I can actually sell it at a higher price. So that was my first taste of value creation. So it's little things like these that have allowed me to enjoy just a little bit more pocket money than the average kid at school. And many people ask me how I ended up studying design, but not commerce or finance, since I have a track record of enjoying making money. Little did I know at that time when I choose what to study at uni, but in retrospect, I've actually figured it out. I'm just naturally fascinated by creation, constant innovation, and challenging the status quo. So my real entrepreneurial journey really started when I was in uni. I was never a big fan of the school system, and the big shift from a rigid timetable at high school to a very flexible schedule at uni means that now I have all the time in the world. Plus, psychologically, it's less consequential for not attending lectures and tutorials at uni compared to back in high school, right? So I spent most of my time during uni times like working part-time jobs, actually a few part-time jobs, making it pretty full-time. So I work at Coles. I did freelance door-to-door sales, selling kitchen knives. I did work experience at a number of different design agencies. And that's when I get a real taste of making money in the real world. And guess what? It's bloody hard and extremely boring. To give you some perspective, in the year of 2000, the average wage of an Australian is $34,750. A year. And because I was studying design, so I looked up what a junior graphic designer can earn. And it is a shocking $25,000 a year. And the only career progression that you can aspire to is becoming a creative director, maybe 10, 12 years later, earning $100,000 to $120,000 a year tops. So I totally freaked out just having that thought, right? And for a bit more context, my dad is a registered tax accountant and my mom was a primary school teacher. So they've always preached her, go to school, get good grades, land a good job, build your career and retire happily ever after with a fully paid family home, a couple of investment properties, a wife and 2 kids. So marrying that with the thought of spending 12 years just to get $100,000 in wages and you pay tax as well, right? The whole thing just doesn't add up. So I convinced myself, it's a lie. So I started looking for alternatives. Think about in the movies, like who usually are the wealthy people? People in business, yes. So let's do business, I said to myself. But what can I do? I know a bit of graphic design. I've done door-to-door sales. I've worked at Coles. I know how to serve customers. So let's sell graphic design door-to-door. So basically that's freelancing as we know it today. But I literally did knock on doors from restaurant to restaurant, asking if they need to redesign their menu or go from one student society at uni to another student society, asking if they need some business cards or flyers designed and printed. That really is how I've started 20 years ago. And that single thought of hell no had led me to the starting of my own design agency, then turning it into a web design and development company where we have built websites and apps for more than 500 businesses, including McDonald's and Fujitsu. Then subsequently building a number of different startups myself, started a coffee brand in Hong Kong, mentored hundreds of entrepreneurs, helped them raise capital and build their businesses. And yeah, that's my story.
I found it quite interesting that you're talking about you going door to door as a designer, because it seems like there's a bit of a disconnect, in terms of working that would be more digital online and then having to, do sales in the real world. So that's quite interesting to hear.
You got to remember, back in the days, like not everyone is on the internet, and not every business is on the internet. So literally, you can't really find business, just going online.
Right.
And because of my experience as a door-to-door sales selling, kitchen knives, then it was a no-brainer. That was my only way, because that's the only way I knew.
Well, yeah, it's also interesting that you said you just kind of had you had sort of an innate sense of entrepreneurship, and you knew you wanted to be earning more pocket money. It definitely, I get the sense that you're more kind of thinking long term, as opposed to like what's the next uni semester. You were thinking more about your actual future, and of course you said up to 10 years as your career prospects in designing. So that's quite interesting. And so with this web development agency that you just mentioned, I noticed something, obviously what you just said, and also some research I've done, that there was a certain realization that trading time for money you didn't consider that to technically be a business. And of course, you just mentioned, the typical pathway for a lot of individuals in terms of career progression, family. So can you just explain a little bit about this idea that trading your time for money wasn't technically a business, and how you started just operating in that way?
Okay. Yeah, this is a very important concept for myself, and it was actually heavily influenced by a number of people, including Robert Kiyosaki, Rich Dad Poor Dad, the book, the Four Financial Quadrants. And for those who haven't read the book, it's basically four types of people, right? So there is the employee, the self-employed, the business owner, and investor. And after reading that book, like it surely got me thinking about which quadrant was I in. When I first started S3 Group, I thought I was starting a business. We've set up a proprietary limited company. We've registered a business name. We rented an office. We have staff. We have clients. We have payables. We have receivables. We pay tax. Surely, we're running a business, aren't we? Little do I know, I wasn't really. So looking back, I didn't think I have taken a day off in the first 5 years of running that company.
Okay.
If I wasn't there, everything collapses. If I don't go out there and find clients, there's no income. And if I don't push my staff and provide guidance to them closely, they don't know what to do, or things don't get done properly. If I don't pay the bills, no one would. And all of that, it's my own fault, out of ignorance. But don't get me wrong, like we were making decent money back then, but I just wasn't a business owner in a sense. At best, I have bought myself a job, a crazy job. 18 hours a day, 7 days a week, no social life, no vacation, fast food takeaway every day. Who'd want that? But if you look around, there are plenty of small business owners out there who thought they were running a business, but like I was, they bought themselves a ridiculous job. And chances are they make less money than they would have as an employee working for someone else due to lack of financial literacy. So during my journey, what I learned was, to truly become a business owner, you need to create a commercially profitable enterprise that works without you, which means you need to upgrade your financial literacy. You need to learn about management, learn about building a team. You learn about building a company culture, delegation, automation, systemization, and the list goes on, right? And while I was learning about all of these things, I also discovered that I have been looking at the wrong metric all the time. When you have two people in front of you and you're trying to work out who's got more money, right? What's the first thing that comes to mind? I don't know about you, but when I was in my early 20s, I judged by the income that a person can bring in. If it's an employee, the salary, right? Or business owners, well, self-employed, how much net profit they make in a year. Well, again, due to ignorance, or maybe I have chosen design over finance, I didn't know that personal wealth was actually measured by net worth, and a company is measured by market capitalization or valuation. And once I had that realization, I started to see things very differently hereafter. It's all about value creation and finance as a tool. And to sum it all up, like the realization of, and subsequently acknowledging it myself, the fact that I was trading my time for money is one of the best moments in my life. And I never looked back since then.
Yeah, it's quite interesting to hear you say that. And I've obviously in my own just learnings and interacting with people, a lot of people nowadays are talking about like valuing these certain metrics, like taking more consideration into time and maybe perhaps breaking it down into, instead of yearly salary, really breaking it down into like per hour and like seeing really how much you actually are getting out. So that is quite interesting to hear. So moving forward a little bit. So in 2004, you founded S3 Group to support startups, and you have worked with other startups yourself for such a long time as a consultant and also as a mentor. So are there certain patterns that you have seen emerging through your experiences, or do you always keep seeing the same things, or are there new things that are also popping up?
Right. Yeah. So back in 2004, right, the tech startup scene wasn't really there. Everyone's just small businesses or SMEs, right? But to answer your question, we did work with a lot of entrepreneurs who have new ideas. So we kept seeing new things, obviously. However, the mistakes that I've seen are all the same. If you try to look for a pattern for success, it's actually quite challenging because every successful venture is unique in itself at that particular time. You won't see another Facebook today because circumstances have changed. But if you look at failed ventures, they all look the same. So the most common mistake and the most deadly is that people keep building things that nobody wants. When we come up with ideas, usually it's no more than a bunch of assumptions based on our current knowledge, experience, observations, and what other people have told us, right? We tend to create an ideal version of what the solution looks like and how people should use it. And then we go out there to find facts to rationalize as much as we can and to convince ourselves and other people, investors, employees, customers, whatnot, that the idea is great. And oftentimes we totally neglect whether the intended target customers want the solution in that particular way that you have in mind or at all. So this mistake is, I think, is a result of our education and how it frames the way we typically approach things. Innovation, I think, cannot be planned the same way as executing a project with proven methodology. So I'll give you an example. Let's say building a house, right? Many houses have been built previously. There are blueprints, best practice, success stories. You know you can do it. There's no secret to it at all. So you only have to plan the budget and time accordingly, then execute it really well. Then you get the result. You can build a house. That's it, right? The only thing that can go wrong in that case is the execution itself, but not so much about the planning, right? However, if you are to design a new methodology to build a house, let's say using 3D printed components that you can put together in a DIY style, right? Let's say, for example. In that case, there's no precedent to this, and you are faced with extreme uncertainties. You know, you don't know what the market is like. You don't know how people are going to face it, regulations like production times, cost, et cetera, et cetera. So many things, right? The mindset that is required to take this innovation forward is very different to the one used to build, let's say, a traditional house. That is why typically people with MBAs usually have a hard time turning new ideas into reality, but they are really good at managing an established business with proven products and growth engines. I actually won't go any further. I can talk for days on the topic of common mistakes by startup founders. But seriously, like for anyone who's really interested in startups, innovation, and turning your own ideas into reality, I strongly recommend you to start reading 2 books. The first one is 0 to 1 by Peter Thiel, and then The Lean Startup by Eric Ries. And it's actually a good idea to read it in that order because the first book challenges your thinking, and then the second one provides you with a framework that you can follow.
Well, it does seem like that you've had obviously some really cool lessons from some of these books that you mentioned. And I can't help but thinking, I had a conversation earlier this week with a friend. We're actually talking about some of the, potentially negative aspects of this kind of like self-help industry, but I still recognize that, there is also always like a real importance for this knowledge that, as you said, you just would never get normally in traditional schooling, high school and education. And so outside that traditional education and also in your own work, I've seen that you have spent a lot of time and energy fostering the startup ecosystem in Australia, as well as overseas through universities and your own businesses, and also government programs. So why is it that you personally find it so important and valuable to give your time and energy back to that startup ecosystem?
Well, wouldn't it be wonderful if everyone in this world is an entrepreneur? And that's exactly what I mean. We all do it. I have an ideal version of the world myself, where everyone is an entrepreneur. Everyone challenges the status quo. Everyone has kept their innate curiosity and question things about, our lives, our society, humanity. No one sits on their bum all day watching Netflix anymore. Like no one craves for 3 holidays a year anymore. No one is scared about this and afraid about that anymore. And everyone starts going out there and do something meaningful for our world. So that's my own version of the world as is. But hey, like does everyone wants to be an entrepreneur at this very moment? Probably not. Well, definitely not. And my belief is that if I'm the one who wants to turn this vision into reality, then it becomes my responsibility to put in the hard work and find out more about what's stopping people from liberating their entrepreneurial spirit. And most importantly, to identify those who already has the motivation to do so and give them all the help I can in contributing to creating better entrepreneurs in this world. This is a never-ending process, but we contribute what we can in our lifetime. What matters are the footprints that we leave behind, whether big or small. At the end of the day, like I'm going to be gone before I know it. So I'm just trying to do the best I can and enjoy myself.
Wow, that is quite an interesting view of the world that you had. But it is, just from me talking, I can sense your genuine passion for, not necessarily that whole ideal, but just helping those people that you said might have that motivation or that same desire that you also share.
That gets me out of bed every day.
There's the classic. So can you explain a bit about your current role with I4 Connect? I do know that it's partnering quite closely with the New South Wales government. And can you also share your ideas about where you perhaps see the startup scene in Australia heading?
Okay. Well, first of all, I have to correct you. It's not the New South Wales government. It's actually the federal government. So I4 Connect is the selected delivery partner for the federal government Aus Industry Entrepreneurs Program. So in short, we help entrepreneurs access commercialization guidance and capital through the Accelerating Commercialization Grants Program. So there are 25 commercialization facilitators around the country working with entrepreneurs day in, day out to support their solution products or services to go to market faster. And as a result, creating more investment-ready companies in Australia. And I happen to be one of the facilitators based in New South Wales. So that's my role with I4 Connect. And if you ask me about the Australian startup scene, I'll say that it's growing stronger day by day. We've seen significant progress recently with constant investment pumping into innovative companies. The deal size are getting larger, but most importantly, we are seeing successful Aussie companies who have done it well themselves and then went on to support the next generation of startups in Australia. And as an example, one of my portfolio companies has recently raised $8 million in Series A funding. And this investment was actually led by an Australian unicorn who also happens to have gone through the same government program years back. And this is the type of phenomenon you want to see happening within a startup ecosystem. It's kind of like the PayPal mafias who have exited eBay, and then most of their co-founders and early team members went on to build their other successful startups themselves, and subsequently supporting other startups through investment and mentorship. So yeah, it's really good to see that starting to happen in Australia. And from an industry and sector point of view, I personally want to see more progress in renewable energy and agriculture technology. we've got great technology in renewable energy space. But to really kick some goals, I think we have to speed up the process of turning these technologies into tangible and easy to adopt products where more people can enjoy the benefits of these technologies. For example, commoditizing solar or electrifying daily household appliances like gas-powered water heaters. And in terms of agriculture, I think it's also very important. We need to produce more food consistently because the population is growing, right? And we have seen great innovation in this space locally. One of my portfolio companies have developed a fully automated cultivation engine, which can grow vegetables 24/7, immune to weather conditions, meaning productivity is guaranteed and highly efficient. And the quality of the produce will be identical each time. The solution can even control the nutrients level of each individual plant itself. That really helped drive us forward with a more health conscious diet. And I think we need more of these companies in Australia.
Interesting. You do definitely hear a lot, very big in the media about both agricultural and then renewable energy. But it definitely isn't up for debate at this point in terms of like where things are heading in terms of more sustainability. Just all companies and I guess startups as well looking to help drive forward that where things are already beginning to go. So you shared a bit of your personal advice about your take on the world in terms of like individuals, and then also you just shared a little bit about which industries you feel should be further developed. So given that, is there any other advice that you would like to give to the audience watching at home, perhaps some young entrepreneurs or people who are maybe a little bit uncertain about their near future? So what would you tell them?
Okay, yeah, I can actually share a few. If you want to embark onto an entrepreneurial journey, you need to be well prepared for a lifetime of criticism, disagreement, conflicts, and confrontation with people around you, especially those that are close to you. Entrepreneurs are those who constantly challenge the status quo and question why things cannot be done in another way, right? That will attract a lot of conflict. And people will call you stupid, unrealistic. They'll tell you to get real and come back down to earth, go find a good job or something like that, right? You probably experience self-doubt every second day on a good day, but that's okay. It's normal. Like you just have to manage it. So if you're considering embarking on this journey, get used to it at a young age and learn to deal with it. And as a teenager, or if you are at your early 20s, chances are the people that you've spent the most time with in your life so far, right, are your parents, your siblings, relatives, and some of your friends. And I can tell you, very likely, they would become your biggest obstacle from getting started with your entrepreneurial journey for one simple reason only, because they love you and you love them. As I mentioned before, everyone has an ideal version of how everything should work in the world, including parents thinking what's best for their children. It's quite tricky to handle that psychologically, okay? So it's a good idea to start thinking about it if you're serious about entrepreneurship. Like I didn't know better when I was young, so I just rebelled. So in retrospect, perhaps there were a million other ways to handle those relationships, and hopefully you can do better than I did. And lastly, go and build a strong team whilst young and nurture those relationships preciously. This will become one of your biggest assets as you move along in your life. Why do you think we always hear successful startup stories originated from 2 or 3 college students hacking away and build the next company that changed the world? In my opinion, I think it's because college students are naive, full of energy, and with less burden. That is the time when you can just do whatever. You can lock yourself in the room for 3 days with your mates without having to worry about making breakfast for your children or attend to the sentiment of your spouse because you haven't done your dishes for 3 nights in a row. That's criminal, by the way. On top of that, when you get to my age, and if you receive a phone call, 10 times out of 10, well, maybe 9.9 times out of 10, someone wants something from you. That's why they call you. Okay. It become harder to build genuine relationships with another person from scratch as you get older. So it's a lot more transactional. Or your old friends have settled in life and really didn't have that energy to do anything outside of the normal life anymore. But whilst you're young, it's different. A few people can easily devote their lives towards a common vision. The spiritual bonding that you can build up with these few people like early in your life are very different to those whom you seek to develop at a later stage of your life. Because after all, like everyone has their own agenda, but whilst you're young, that seems to be a little bit more malleable. So cherish that and take advantage of it. I guess to sum it up, like entrepreneurship, it's a lifestyle. It's a way of thinking. It's a never-ending process. Just start learning about it. Practice it through doing and trying things. And most importantly, along the way, have fun.
There we go. Yeah, like a lot of the things you said have definitely, I would say, correlated with some of my own thinkings. In terms of the the massive success factor you mentioned a couple of minutes ago about the lack of susceptibility to negative influence. I think that is like a very big one. That obviously, like a lot of this stuff that you've mentioned, talking about different books about financial literacy and also these ways of thinking. It almost seems like maybe they're not like vividly promoted in like media, or it almost seems like you have to like perhaps like dig a little bit deeper or question things a little bit more before you start accessing these kind of ways of thinking, because it definitely doesn't seem that the default way that or path that everyone's being pushed down is entrepreneur having this ability to innovate and also manage all these different expectations and also criticism, as you said. So that's quite interesting. And then we have a question just following up from your advice. Well, this is less so advice, but one of our audience members requested a question of you, and it was, what does a typical day in your life look like? I know you're very involved with startups in a multitude of ways. So could you just run us through perhaps what, let's say, an average day would look like for you?
Okay. Currently, because we are in lockdown, so my typical day looks like this. So I get up, I have a morning run around 2 to 3 Ks with my son. Then I go buy coffee. Then I read a book for an hour and get prepared for my day. Start doing work. And the majority of my day are Zoom meetings. I meet with entrepreneurs every day. So the job involves like quite a number of different hats. Like first of all, we have to promote the program so more entrepreneurs understand that there are support here for them at a particular stage of their business life cycle. So business development and getting awareness out there, kind of like in investment terms, we're getting our deal flow. Okay, so that's one of the things we have to do. So part of doing interviews and doing videos, blogs, and stuff like that. So that's part of my day, and we also are vetting a lot of different startups, because people come to us, they inquire whether they can potentially apply for funding from the program itself. So we put on our vetting hat and say, oh, okay, you're here at the moment. These are your value propositions. This is the market you're looking for. That's the team. We kind of do like very quick assessment, on the fly when we first meet with a founder, and looking at the business and give them advice accordingly. And then there is the hat of the process and procedures of actually going through the government government grant application process. So we guide entrepreneurs in compliance, and also the way like what is needed to be put together as an application. Then after that process, what we do is we will have to put on our due diligence hat and start scrutinizing what they have claimed, and looking at various things kind of like what you do in a venture capital firm. You do a lot of due diligence, calling people out, doing technical due diligence, ripping their software apart, looking at how it works, and various things, looking at the financials and checking all the assumptions to see if it stacks up, that kind of thing. And then we participate in presenting into the committee, kind of like an investment committee where there's a group of people looking at all the deals that we've prepared, and they make recommendations to the government for funding. And for companies that have already gone through the program and got funded, then those become portfolio companies, and we work with them like a board of director kind of role, similar to that type of role, where you monitor the progress, and if they have they run into any reg wars or their challenges, you have a chat with them, steer them to the right direction, try to provide any resources or referrals as best as you can, strategically help them with the growth or managing their crisis or projects or whatever it is. So yeah, it's quite a variety in there, but most of the time during my day is meeting with entrepreneurs and going on Zoom meetings and really discussing their businesses, or giving advice or guidance on how can we test the next assumption, and how do we actually get to the hearts of our customers and to really find that problem solution fit. So that really is the bulk of the stuff that I do on a daily basis. And in between, because we are working from home now, it's a little bit more flexible. I've got an 8-year-old next door. He has homeschooling, working on his laptop. So at times I would just go check in with him. I've got a basketball hoop at home in the backyard, so I play basketball here and there. Just get away from the screen. Spend 5 minutes, 10 minutes with your son there playing basketball. And I play the piano and guitar as well. So I just shovel all of these things in between my work. Like you have a 30-minute Zoom call, and then you play one song, and you come back and do some paperwork, and then you play basketball, and then you come back. So that has really shaped up how I've worked in the last 18 months because of because of the situation. But I'm enjoying it.
That's great. So Jonathan, you've obviously shared a bit about your story. You've given advice and shared your opinions about the future of entrepreneurship and the startup ecosystem. Is there any anything else that you might like to share with the audience before we wrap up?
I guess they're like, considering the audience, right, at quite a young age, and I think the biggest hurdle is whether I should do it. Right, that is the biggest thing, and everyone has it. And I've got friends who are my age and still thinking about that. Right, it took them 20-30 years. I guess my advice would be stop thinking about it. Like if you think of something, go do it. It does not mean that you have to give up everything and do it. Right. I was doing 2-3 part-time jobs while I pursue something that I thought I should do. Totally fine. Like, we've got bills to pay, we've got the life to live, and that's just the circumstances. So according to your own situation, then you do the best you can. And as I said, entrepreneurship is really a way of living. So this is just a start. There's no end point to it, and the earlier you engage with it, you can really learn about entrepreneurship and apply it to different aspects of your life. Even working for someone as an employee in a large corporate environment, entrepreneurship and the way of thinking will help you with your career progression as well. So my advice would be, start early. If that's something that you want to do it, and learn from it.
Well, Jonathan, being someone who's young and very interested in entrepreneurship myself, I do appreciate the work that you and also other people in the ecosystem do, spending their time with young startups, mentoring, and also, as you mentioned earlier, just making it aware that there are people out there who are interesting to help and looking to support the next generation. So I do personally appreciate that, and I'm sure the other entrepreneurs at home watching do appreciate that. And is there anywhere in particular that you would recommend for taking a first step in terms of, let's say someone wants to, as you said, just take some action, maybe at a university level, anywhere that you would recommend first getting into entrepreneurship, or any places where people might be able to seek help?
I guess for myself, okay, the most effective way obviously is to just go and do it. But 20 years ago, it was very different. The ecosystem was different. Like there's no one really involved with anything. Like everyone's just doing their own things. Now we've got a much more vibrant community. Like it's a pity that it's we're going through this pandemic, and we couldn't really engage with a lot of the events. Like a few years back, like I crashed every single event, and that's a really good way to just mingle with other similar-minded people. Understand, just chatting. What are you doing? Like, what's your startup? How are you doing it? What have you been going through? Like, just having those kind of casual chats will get you started. Yeah, because it's just a matter of exposure. Because if you sit there and try to learn everything that you can before you make a move, then you'll never make a move. But if you start to talk to those kind of people, which typically is not people that are around you, just for some reason, like for the average person, right? Then you got to make a proactive decision to go out and meet these people. And in today's current situation, there are still a lot of webinars, online events ran by incubators, accelerators, universities. As you said, I'm involved a little bit with the UNSW Founders Program. They have demo days, they have competitions, so a lot of things that you can actually engage with. So sign up to a couple of these events and get started. Mingle with people. Just reach out, talk to them, and ask questions. And along the way, you discover more. Like people will definitely give you more advice. Oh yeah, I'll talk to that person, or read this book. Like go to this blog, and then that would start to snowball.
Well, Jonathan, it's been a pleasure discussing your story and just entrepreneurship in general. I'm sure everyone watching at home really appreciates your insights. So we'll sign out now. For the entrepreneurs and audience at home, you can expect fairly regular podcast episodes, which we will be doing to close out the rest of 2021. Righty, Jonathan. So once again, thanks very much for coming in and speaking. And I'm sure everyone really appreciated it.
My pleasure. Thank you, Oscar, for having me here today.